Here we go.
Years ago, my uncle owned a funeral home, and I got a summer job, working part-time in the crematorium. It wasn't a lot of fun, but
Hmm.
it certainly paid well. And being a poor student, I definitely needed them.
I don't know why when I was like a teenager, I wanted to work at a funeral home. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because it was just mysterious to me. I don't know. It was just for some reason it was very like alluring, I guess, to me. Like I don't know why, but I quickly got over that
Money.
shit.
Dealing with dead bodies was very creepy at first, but after a few days, you kind of get used to it. Kind of. So one morning, I was sweeping the floor of the crematorium when a black hearse pulled up in the parking lot outside. A man in a black suit stepped out. My uncle went over to talk to him. After a while, he called me over and told me to help him carry the coffin into the crematorium. I thought it was strange because usually they brought the coffins into the funeral home next door first, but I didn't ask questions. We set the coffin down on the
It's a
ground,
setup.
and my uncle went over to prepare the oven for cremation. For a few minutes, I was left alone with the man in the black suit. There was an awkward silence. I didn't know what to say. I
Man
assumed
in a
that it was a
black suit.
relative who had just died, who was lying in a coffin, but
Made me think of the
he
tall
didn't
man
seem at all
from
upset.
Phantasm.
When the oven was ready, my uncle and I picked up the coffin and brought it over to the metal bench. We took off the top of the casket. I saw the corpse inside was a man who looked to be about 30 years old. Usually, the dead bodies were very pale, but this one looked pink in the face. My uncle stoked the fire, then pressed the button
Still
to
got
start
blood
the sprayer.
circulating.
The coffin was moved slowly into the oven, and it was all the way inside. My uncle closed the door.
That's another thing I never quite understood. Like, people buy those coffins, and I've seen like people spend like $10,000, depending on the coffin, and then they get cremated. They have their person cremated. They have the funeral, all that stuff, and then they have the coffin sent over to the funeral home to have it cremated. Or if they're, because I've actually been to a funeral where a relative where they took the body to like a grave site and had them I guess it was all symbolic, and I guess they don't care. They're like, hey, you want to pay for this? But I didn't think they would offer that. They put the coffin down the grave, and then just then everyone kind of said the pay. Then we left, and I remember we was leaving. I saw them raise the coffin back up, and I was like, at the time I didn't know they were going to cremate, the person, and I was like, why they bring the coffin back up? I'm thinking it was a problem. And I found out later on this person was cremated. I said, and why did we go through all that stuff? We could have just had the thing at the funeral home. You walk by, everyone kind of like say their goodbyes, and then you leave. They take it in the back, cremate it, and give the people the urn, the immediate family the urn. And well, one thing I never understood that they burn the coffin too. Like you pay for that coffin, and they burn that too, rather than just putting the body in an incinerator and just, well, I guess is it incinerator? I guess it's or furnace, whatever, and just burning the body. I was like, why you spending that money on a coffin? And you
Or,
that
and I
never
just
made
stood
sense to
around,
me.
waiting. It usually took an hour before everything was burnt and reduced to ashes. After that, I would have to collect the ashes and put them in an urn, so they could be given to the family. My uncle and the man in the black suit went into the funeral home next door. I assumed they were filling out the usual paperwork, so I was left alone in the crematorium to continue sweeping up. After about 10 minutes, I heard a strange noise coming from the oven. It was like a faint knocking sound.
Oh, shit.
At first, I
It's a
thought it was my
zombie.
imagination, but then it grew into a loud banging. I tried to tell myself that it was just the metal warping from the heat. It was the unmistakable sound of someone frantically banging on something, desperately trying to get out. A chill went down my spine and the brush fell from my hands. I was sure the man inside was still alive. Terrified, I ran into the funeral home and, shaking uncontrollably, I told my uncle what I had heard. Leading them back into the crematorium, I told them to listen. "I don't hear anything," said
It's
my
a
uncle.
zombie.
"Me neither," said the man in the black suit. I
Oh,
looked
get
at
the
him,
fuck out. They don't
shocked
hear
and
that.
stunned. I even began to doubt my own sanity. My uncle and the man in the black suit shrugged their shoulders and went back to the funeral home.
Somebody killing
I
somebody
just
for
stood in
some
the middle of the
insurance money.
crematorium, listening intently, collected the ashes from the tray underneath and poured them into an urn. The man took it and, with a broad smile on his face, he got back into his car and drove away. I have nightmares about that hideous banging sound I heard coming from inside the oven.
I wouldn't think about it too much. You couldn't do nothing about it. I guess you could. They just ignored
This is
him and
something
just
that happened to me and I
laughed
still
about
can't
it.
explain
It
it.
was like, oh no.
I lived in Japan for 2 years, way out in the island of Kyushu, in a really rural town. I was teaching English there, and I lived in an apartment complex with 9 other English teachers and a handful of Japanese families. All of our apartments were 2-story townhouse style. My apartment was the newest of the bunch. Before me, there had been another English teacher who had lived there for 2 years. But before her, as far as I had been told, the apartment had been empty. I first moved in the beginning of August, which is brutally hot and humid in Japan. It's so humid that the wallpaper in your apartment gets wet and then it starts to curl up. The only air conditioning in the apartment was downstairs and the bedrooms were upstairs. It was truly unpleasant and I ended up having to sleep downstairs to avoid the sweltering heat in my
Is
bedroom.
that hot?
And this is how everything started. One day I came home from school to find my back door wide open. It was a sliding glass door, and before I left for school, I had secured the bolt to it. I had locked the front door as well. At first I thought maybe someone had broken in, but nothing had been taken and not a single thing was out of place.
Was it the
One of my
landlord
neighbors
that
came
came in
over
there?
and looked everywhere with me, but we found nothing strange. At the time I thought it was no big deal. Probably just some curious Japanese kids who thought it would be fun to break in and look at the foreigner's house. That night I was downstairs and I lay down on my futon to go to sleep. And all of a sudden, I heard footsteps upstairs. At first it sounded like someone pacing back and forth between the 2 bedrooms. And then they suddenly stopped.
I just get up and leave.
At this point I was lying on my futon, shaking and holding my breath. I was terrified that whoever broke in earlier had managed to hide upstairs in the crawl space.
I'd have been like, well, guess that's the end of my teaching career in Japan. And just walk the fuck. I just put on my clothes right there. And like, all right, just walked out and called my boss the next day. Like, yeah, I'm done. I'm going back to my country of origin. That's what I'm saying, my country of origin. I don't remember he said he's teaching English, but I don't remember. He said he was American.
After about a minute of silence, I heard an incredibly loud bang, as though something huge and heavy had just fallen and hit the floor above me. I ran out of my apartment and I went to my neighbor's house.
Yeah. Okay, I was about to say, he don't get up.
with me, and we searched upstairs, but we found nothing. This continued to happen every night like clockwork. One night, I was at the local bar with one of the other English teachers. He had been living there for 5 years. I started telling him about the strange things that kept happening every night and how I hadn't been able to sleep because of it. "Well, there's a reason for that," he said. "Before you, there was another teacher in that apartment.
There was a reason for that.
The apartment was empty. Nobody would live in there because a woman hung herself upstairs They thought the place was cursed. So it was empty until the Board of Education decided to rent it out to foreign teachers. At the time, I thought he was just making things up to try to scare me, but
Superstitious.
one day, I asked my boss about it. He immediately turned white and said the other teachers shouldn't have been telling me things like that. I tried to press him for more information, but he would neither confirm
You turn
nor
white
deny.
for.
One day, while cleaning my
He said,
apartment, I noticed that
no, no,
something was
no.
on the underside of the windowsill. Someone had carved the words, "Try to smile," in Japanese about 10 times. When I saw that, I think my blood literally ran cold. I still don't know exactly what happened in that
Oh,
apartment.
that's impossible.
Every night during the summer, until I would start sleeping upstairs again, those same noises would happen without fail.
Damn, I couldn't deal with and hearing those noises, especially in the back of my mind. Someone tells me, oh yes, someone hung themselves in there, and they feel like the place is cursed or haunted or whatever. Like, I don't believe in that stuff, but now that you've planted that idea in my head, now I can't unthink it. So I'm always been thinking about this. So every time I hear something in the apartment, I'm going to immediately think it's a fucking ghost. And like they stayed there. No, I would have to request another room or something. Like, can I get another room? And then he started sleeping back upstairs, and the sounds kept happening. The like, I can just like it'd be one thing like, oh, it's just I'd be just thinking, oh, it's probably a neighbor or something like that, or it's you know the house, shifting or something like that. But now I'm like, oh yeah, this woman hung herself. I'm just like, it'd be like in Japan, because it's to take place in Japan. I don't know if it's near like the suicide forest. Like if I didn't know it was that's what that was, and I just walked in there, I probably wouldn't think twice about anything. But if you know that it's the suicide forest, that a lot of people go there and commit suicide. Even people they've said that had no real inkling that they were going to commit suicide went in there and were compelled to commit suicide. And if I know that going in there, I'm gonna feel a kind of way. You're gonna feel like, yeah, I know it could be like your mind playing tricks on you. It's like you feel like the atmosphere changes. It's like well, I've read that people who go like to Auschwitz, and they know that, especially people who really know the history and stuff like that, or take those tours there. Then they have a tour guide tell them the history. Like you feel like, prime example, when I first moved to Oklahoma, I went. They took us on a trip to uh, the place of the Oklahoma City bombing, and we was there, and they kind of had like tour guides. Well, like people talking about the history of it and all this stuff, and I got this like overwhelming like sadness, and where I start like crying because the other people there like kind of crying too, and I was just like, some of the other, because we were like a uniform. This one was in the Air Force, and we were like in our dress blues, and we just start like tearing up, and it's almost like contagious. Like it's like laughter. Somebody start laughing, other people start laughing. It's the same thing with somebody start crying. Like I start crying, but it's like you feel that, and like I think it's more so because I know the history of what was going down and stuff like that. What happened there? Like whether I was completely oblivious and didn't know anything about it. You know what
I grew up in a very small town in Montana, and during the summer, my brother and I would sometimes sell lemonade by the side of the road. We didn't make a lot of money, but we did have fun selling lemonade to people who were passing by. So one hot afternoon, My brother and I were standing at our lemonade stand when we
This like
noticed an old
this sounds
rusty car
familiar.
pass us, maybe 2 or 3 times. At the time, it struck me as a little creepy.
I might have heard
Eventually, the
another
car slowed down and
uh
stopped right in front of the stand. There was a
scary
woman in the passenger seat,
channel
and as she rolled her window
narrators
down,
say
I saw that she was really
say
skinny
this
with gray hair that
story.
was stained and sickly yellow hue from too much smoking. I couldn't see the man who was driving very well because he never looked at me. He just stared straight ahead. Both of them seemed very odd and their clothes were old and dirty. "You boys out here selling lemonade all by
Dusty ass
yourselves?"
people.
said the old woman. "Yeah, my mom
Like
lets
bitch,
us,"
don't it look like
I
it?
replied. "Is your mom home?" she asked. "Yeah, she's in the house," I said.
But hell yeah, my
The woman
mom.
turned and looked at the man who was
She in
driving.
the house
He
right now,
nodded,
yo. Driver's
still
license
staring
plate
straight
right now.
ahead. The woman turned back to me and said, "Okay, I'll have a lemonade then." I told her it was 25 cents, and then I poured her a glass. She rummaged
Did he
around in
say
her
she
purse,
looked
and
at
I
the
could
dude and he
hear
nodded at
coins
him?
clinking. Then
That
she
what he
pulled
said?
out a $5 bill and held it out to
He
me.
said, "Yeah, get his ass."
A chill went down my spine. Why was she handing me a $5 bill if she had coins in her purse? Something
It's a
just didn't
trap.
feel right. So I told the lady that I didn't have any change. I lied. "You can keep the change. Just come and take the $5 bill." Something felt very
We
wrong.
gonna take your ass.
$5 is a lot of money to a kid. I walked up to the car and I reached out to take the $5 from her hand. As soon as my fingers touched it, the woman suddenly grabbed me by my wrist and began pulling me into the car. I screamed my lungs out and my brother ran into the house yelling for help. The man floored the accelerator and the car
Steven
lurched
Seagal
forward.
has
I fought with all my
broke.
might and managed to wrench myself free from her grasp. The car stopped and the man got out, but I was already running for my life.
Oh
My brother
wow,
was pounding on the door screaming. My mother rushed out and
that's
returned
bold.
just in time to see the rusty old car speeding away. We told my mom what had happened and she called the police. When my brother and I calmed down, we went back to the lemonade stand and there was a $5 bill lying on the ground. We packed up the lemonade stand and put it away for good, never to sell lemonade again. Hell no.
I bet. Hell no. Fuck that shit. There's plenty of other ways to make money. But that's crazy that he said when he broke the woman's grip, the dude stopped the car and got out. Like he better come up and just I'm gonna take this kid and throw him in the car. Like it's like if she wasn't able to pull this kid in the car and then the kid broke free, you would think they would have just stopped right there. Or if she wasn't able to pull him in the car, she would just let go. Because clearly, you're going to draw attention to yourself. Driving down the street, holding the kid outside of a car. Basically dragging him along while you speeding off. Like, yeah, that might draw some attention to yourself. These motherfuckers bold. Like, if they that bold, that make me afraid that they definitely did that to somebody else. They weren't deterred at all. They probably the same day they probably went and did that to somebody else that wasn't so lucky. Cause that's some bullshit. Like, I mean, that's bold anyway to do it in broad daylight in front of the kid's house. You don't know, cause he said, "Yeah, my mom's in the house." Like cause you out here by yourself. Like, well, we're in front of our house. You think we'd be okay in front of our house, but I mean, kids have been abducted like that in front of their house in their yard, and they'll get the kid to come over to the fence if they got a fence in there, and pick that kid up and just walk off. But it's like you don't know if somebody is looking at you. It's like that's some bold shit. Did they even do what I just said? That's bold. Like it's not. It ain't like a kid gets separated from their parent in a crowded store or a mall or something like that. A crowded area, or like maybe they walked away in, I don't know, like a parking garage or something like that. Somewhere where you can disappear. But you in front of somebody's house and you can't see. Like there could be somebody looking right at you from inside the house. You can't see in there. That's some them people like that. They bold, and if they fail, they gonna go try to do that to somebody else. Probably that same day they get away. But anyway, I hope y'all enjoyed my reaction. One of you did, make sure you hit that thumbs up button down below. Make sure to subscribe if you're new here. Hit that bell if you want to be notified when I upload new videos. Comment down below. Share this video. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.